Luke, do you have to kick off the? There we go. Okay. All right. Let's start with old business first. Luke or Hans, have either of you made any progress in any of the issues that we went through last week?
No.
Okay. And Hans?
I've been working on blog post stuff for a bit.
Okay. All right. So we'll say that's done. Next is there was a. Shut it open. If you have the name. Oh, I'll just call him Vans163 in the Lumen channel. Looks like he's trying to compile to Linux, but he is having issues. He tried to follow the process that CI is working, that it's working under CI. His assumption is that the cargo depths the dependencies are perhaps older on CI than what he's able to get. I'm not really sure what he meant by that. But in any event, do either you two have thoughts on this, or is this a Paul thing, the Linux compilation?
The Linux compilation should work for everyone. I mean, Hans has said it was harder to do. Like, the fact that Linux isn't Clang by default makes it harder than Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, so our Mac stuff, like, our Mac development might just accidentally work because, like, the Mac version of Clang isn't overly incompatible with our LLVM, so when we accidentally use the Mac one, it doesn't break the way it does on Linux.
I could just try compiling on my machine and see if I get the same behavior as he does.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that the cache in GitHub Actions makes it work. That's happened before. I mean, that's technically like why Paul can use Nightly and none of us can, because Paul happens to be on a really old, so like literally the like cache key that his Rust up says is Nightly is so old that like it's compatible with the one we use on CI, but if like someone new was to install Nightly, it doesn't work because it's too new.
Oh, because they're removing the old Nightly versions from the host.
Well, no, not necessarily. I think he wasn't necessarily saying the actual Rust version was bad. I think he was considering that but maybe that's what he's implying. I don't know.
I was thinking maybe if you use old enough of the Rust version, maybe they don't host those anymore.
Maybe, but he said he installed the Nightly that CI is using, so it should work. But
I mean, I can just run the container and see what happens locally.
Yeah,
it should be pretty easy for me. Yeah, then we can at least replicate it and see what happens. But we should be up on the latest Nightly soon. EIR is at that point, and I'm guessing Paul has that in progress too. So that should probably happen soon. So if nothing else, we can give him that update.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's got other stuff in there that isn't just the get on a good version of Rust version, though. You know, it's like it's changes to eventually support WASM, so. They're all mixed together right now.
The changes to get Lumen on the latest Nightly, I don't think it's actually that much that needs to be done. Isn't it just like a couple of like trait usages of alloc?
Yeah, but there's actually a lot of trait usages in there, and I don't know. Like, I don't want to change it and break his merge because I've done that before.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we should probably just leave it to him, but we can ask him, like, we can say that it's to that guy that's trying to compile, or I can try it first, and then if that fails, then we can say, you could try again once that gets merged, should hopefully happen soon. How's the status, Paul?
I mean, it isn't... Vans is also the guy that wants to, like, move something back end to be client-side, and, like, WASM doesn't support, so, like, I know he really wants this, but it's not going to help unless he's just going to run the interpreter or something, and the interpreter is working right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like I don't remember exactly what I read he was doing, but I read something about what he was doing, and I don't think that's feasible yet. But if he wants to try and experiment with it, then
yeah, he said a drab/live view like thing on the back, and then he wants to put client side, and I'm like, interpreter maybe, but
Where
Although
was that? Was that
he's
in
putting one
the
Ethereum on it.
last few days?
Yeah, so Vance is also the guy that gave the bounty even for this.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, I see. Back on December 8th. I think I see where you're
Yeah,
referring to.
so yeah, December 8th at 8:45, he explains like what he was actually doing.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, yeah, it's not going to do that.
Okay. I mean, even still, like, I think anyone that's expressing interest in Lumen at this point, if we can help them get over certain humps,
Mhm.
because it helps us identify like some of these pitfalls. So Hans, it sounds like you're going to try to compile on Linux, see if you can reproduce what he's having.
Yeah, I'm trying
But it
to
sounds
start
like
that right now, so we can leave that going. That's probably going to take a little while, but then I'll
That's fine.
probably report back when.
Okay, yeah. Do you see the thread? There was a thread from yesterday that I was responding to him in. I mean, you can either just dump it in the general chat of Lumen or in that thread, but either way, if you have a some sort of outcome or suggestions on and move that forward for him.
Was it today's the day I got Lumen compiling thread?
Yes, that's what I'm referring to. The one that I was referencing, at least.
Yeah, the one right above Paul's post.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so the only post from yesterday. Although I guess probably your yesterday view is different than ours. I guess it's probably to our time zone what counts as yesterday.
All right. So Paul left his update, which was, I'm sure we've all read it at this point, but it seems like he is making progress on compilation, but he's having a more general approach to it, and he's trying to get something in italics to compile to WASM. Hopefully, I mean, I assume next week is going to be everyone's out of the office anyway with vacation time. So
No, I'm not out. I didn't take out extra.
Okay, I mean, I'm around.
I'll be out, but I'll be around days. Like I can be pinged if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I came back for this meeting when I was on vacation because it's an hour.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, I'm open for taking the meeting. I'm nothing against taking the meeting.
Yeah, I'll check with Paul and see if he's available for it. I don't mind, if people want to just take a break for the holidays either. In any event.
I mean, Christmas does land on my dockyard day, so like, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Yeah, the so that is old business. Paul's update. Okay, so let's go with new business. Now I'm going to try to have this format to the stand-ups too, where we try to like clear the deck on anything unresolved from the previous meeting or that was left hanging, and then we'll move forward new business. All right, so Luke, any updates from you this week?
So I got about like to 400 of them, and like I was starting to see a lot of repeat ones. So like I switched from the tactic of manually going through it, and I made a mixed task that I can run over and over again to try to find new errors. And so I did that, but like at the end of last Friday, so it's not done yet. So I'm not.
Are you seeing like Heisenbergs?
No Heisenbugs. It's just that like the part that makes it a class of error is very small in the error output, and so it's mostly like going through and copying that, and it was just getting too hairy. And I can just have the mixed task spit out comma separate values to get the class, and I can always then go back to the full log since I'm printing the name of the test, or just run the test again. And hopefully with this tool, then I can also format the blog post, because I was doing this and I'm like, wow, this is taking multiple, Dockyard Fridays to go through each one. And then I'm like, as soon as I do this and Paul lands, I'm going to have to do it again. I'm like, I need a tool for this.
Okay.
Also, if I write in mix, it can also be once we have enough support for it, I will then compile it in Lumen and run the Lumen checker in Lumen, because I just think that'd be funny.
Are you satisfied with just the CSV output, or do you think that it's at the point, especially if this is going to be something that you're automating and you think is going to be coming up quite a bit as changes to the compiler happen, if you had a UI around it? Like if we basically subscribe to some sort of error reporting service where it track those errors so you can go through them more easily.
So obviously the current output is human readable output. I mean, I made the output for the most part. There are errors that come from Hans's EIR output and Paul's, but like me spitting them back out is me doing it.
Mhm.
So obviously, we could. Some of it will always be not machine parsable because of that. Obviously, we could have the outputter output JSON. I guess thinking about like the thing I would almost want is like coveralls IO where like you have the history of like this got better because sometimes we have regressions.
Yeah.
When Paul figures out like, oh, we can use this new thing in upstream from LLVM, like he has to re-implement what he did before in that, and sometimes there's regressions. So that'd be cool, but like having just like 8 hours every week to work on it, like that's a big time sink for the future benefit. Like, yes, it's for future benefit, sure. And like the Rust compiler team has that, but they're a much bigger team than we are. So I could see it being helpful. I mean, right now I'm doing the tool only because it is faster than me copy and pasting.
Right.
I think.
Okay.
And the fact that I wanted to. The way I'm doing the tool now is that as soon as it sees an error, it doesn't know, it just breaks. Which isn't how an automated tool would work. You'd put in a dead letter pile and be like, figure out what this is. But this is good enough for spitting out a CSV and then like putting the CSV into Sheets, sorting it, and then like maybe adding an output format so that I can auto-generate the description of the GitHub issues, so that like I don't have to manually copy the name of each tested and say, run this test, see this error. So I might do that too, but yes, it'd be useful, but I think it's too much of a time sink.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we could make it work with one of the pre-existing things.
Well, so I mean, there's APIs. I know a lot of them are set up to like their UIs are meant for web request response error types and like showing those rather than like other types of projects. But I mean, even GitHub issues, like dumping something in there.
So is the purpose just tracking like how many issues we have over time?
Well, I was looking at it from two ways. Either I like, as Luke suggested, kind of the historical aspect to it, but I also think just from a management perspective, if there's a lot of them, like going through them over a CSV can be monotonous. If there's a UI around it, it could be a little bit easier to parse and manage.
Well, the CSV, like I'm going to put it into an Excel like tool, and then I use the unique key, and so like it really doesn't matter to look at the actual list. Like that's why I'm not listing the errors. I'm classifying them based on like the common string, and then that becomes an issue. And then for prioritization, it's just like which ones are we hitting the most? Because at like 1,000, unless we can literally say like, oh, this type of error only occurs in Megaco, and who gives a shit about that protocol?
Right.
Like the reason we would do it is because it is another corpus of test code to compile against. But if literally the only thing that doesn't work is part of OTP that OTP barely wants to maintain, maybe we'll be like, eh. But otherwise, just having the pure count of like, well, of the 1,000, 50 of them are impacted by this, and 50 is the thing that's the most impact, and I'll be like, oh, this is the bug that I want Hans or Paul to concentrate on because we'll have the most bang for the buck. And also, as we've seen with Paul's changes before, like we didn't change the number that we're working. We just saw the next class of bugs in that same file because these files aren't small, and so making sure that we get the ones that affect the most means we didn't see the next error, so that we can prioritize correctly for like the next bug that's hidden by the first bug.
So cargo test has like a JSON output, right?
I know probably, yeah, because Paul used it in the Lumen build. So yes, I could switch to that. I don't.
I was just thinking like so like what we're sort of trying to do, right, is we're trying to look at we find the individual like tests and then just like track over time if they fail or not, and then if they fail, the error message, and then try to classify that error message into like a class of error, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking. I don't know how much time I want to use on it. That's the thing.
I mean, I could do the JSON output right now. I am literally using like enums, I'm using stream and just like using chunk while and just like looking for the start of the errors. Obviously, the JSON one I would be able to do JSON lookup, so it would be less dumb. But
like if we
was
manage to from like some form of CR, some form of like build, just collect that JSON output and then just store it in like a bucket or something, then one can just write a script that just goes through the whole bulk of history and just like generates an output.
Yeah,
That'll probably be easier than because then if we want to augment it, then just rerun it and you get the full history. I don't know.
Yeah, artifacts are harder on GitHub Actions because they don't have an artifact store. Like they have like release store, but they don't have general like test result artifact store like some of the other CI providers have. So that's something annoying.
What sort of relationship does GitHub Actions have to like secrets?
I think you can do secret. Yeah, you can do secrets. I don't remember the exact how it works.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just
It's probably like the other ones where like the forks can't see the secrets, but
yeah.
But it's always the case with like if no forks can't do it, yeah, and so it's forks can't see it. And so you just have to make sure that they don't change the build file so that they like echo your secrets all of a sudden, which is how all the CIs work.
Yeah, I mean, like worst case, like a real simple. If we could do like something where we just do a simple thing where we just push the JSON output to like a S3 or equivalent store, then we could like start simple and just do like a really simple viewer and then start as we need it or like augment it as we go. That would probably be like a really low barrier to entry to getting this started.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said last week, Hans, the biggest one is fixing the source spans for you at least, and probably the biggest one for Paul is that tuples, like the internal elements, the nested tuple elements don't lower.
I was hoping to get like this is like a bad habit of mine, but I'm trying to get better at it. Where I change creep. I don't know what you could call it. Where I'm sort of working on one area and then it expands to something else and something else, and then you have like a whole big thing locally that you need a part of to.
Normally, what I do is like, I mean, I've only gotten good at this in the past few years, is because like I used to develop the same way Paul did. Was I got much better at rebasing. So like I do this and then it just doesn't show up in history because once I realize I did that, then I go back and like I might spend a day cleaning up the commit history before I PR. And then I might spin it off because I mean, definitely with your and Paul stuff, like right now we can't get your stuff because your stuff depends on latest Rust. And so that means we need latest Rust, but Paul's latest Rust stuff is mixed in with all his like MLIR changes.
If I were to do a change like that, then we would have to like make another like old branch where I would have to like put things on top of again. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I would really like when I open a bug for just that bug to be fixed. If you figure out that the bug should be forked, like the bug is actually two classes of issues, just fix the one way, because then we show that progress is being made, and it's we're getting updates.
I'll probably put aside that branch of big changes that I have, and then just do try doing source spans as one thing and get that out there, because I think as you mentioned, that's probably the thing it would be most beneficial to get out of the door like very soon.
Well, especially because we're not even hitting the compiler then. We're just hitting the parser at that point.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
And I guess you could prioritize it that way, is like figure out what in the sequence of the front end, like what do we hit first? So like source span seems to be it, and like the other one would be the ones where like we think that the tokens are invalid because of like the like some of the module attributes for like compile and removed and deprecated.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like if we can get everything parsing, that would be a really good first step. And I think so. How are you doing for testing the compiling of the different files? How are you building all the files? Like how are you doing making sure all of them get correct includes and stuff?
For the includes, I'm just doing it manually. I'm not doing the entire app directory because I want each file to be. I want the minimum amount of dependencies so that to separate the errors. Because obviously, if we do the whole app, then if one app can't compile, the entire app seems like it can't compile.
Do you have what you've done so far, like with the includes and stuff? Because I could just take that and I could port it over to like the EIR compiler
Yeah, it's
utility.
it's just sitting in the Lumen directory for so in native implemented OTP under tests, there's like an internal directory and an external directory. The internal is like the code we wrote. The external directory is testing our fork of Erlang OTP, which we call Lumen OTP. And so if you look in there, those are all going through each file and testing it.
So you just have one Rust test for each of them?
Yes. And
Okay.
that way we could get individual ones, because remember, at certain points when I was doing this, the compiler was straight up segfault, so they had to be separate.
Yeah.
Obviously, as it becomes more reliable, them being separate is less important, but a segfault means I have to run the compiler separately for each one.
I also think like what I would probably want to do is to just maybe I can just like write a regex or something and try to extract the commands you're running on each of the ones, because then if I could just like because the ER compiling tool that runs like the front end and the passes that it tends to run that. What I really want to do is I want to run that on every file. So I just need like the includes and stuff to pass into that, and then I get out.
So I use the macro. So like literally the way the directories are set up is like there's a relative directory path to say where to get it, and the actual line is like test compile lumen OTP and like the name of the file without even the EIR extension. And there's some ones that are more complicated that like says that they depend on something, but there's actually so like I say imports for like it needs to import another file or something. It's actually like it is the minimum amount of information to get something to build because I macroized all of it.
Okay, yeah, nice. Then I could probably really easily just like pull out all of your work there and just like run that over. Yeah, that would be really nice because then I can test all of that on EIR directly without having to call a full compiler, which is probably a lot faster and a lot more convenient. So that yeah, then I can work on that in a more like in a smaller like feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping to. I just remembered that I had access to like a really nice Kubernetes cluster, and I was hoping to run the image on that, but it's not managing to start the image. Well, I'll give that a go and try to get that running so we can get some feedback to him.
Okay. Hans, do you have any specific updates for today, or do you think you already touched upon them?
I think I mostly gotten everything out of the way.
Okay. All right. Let's call it there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.